Uganda.
The UN Population Summit has come to an end here in the Kenyan capital, Nairobi. Now, at the Nairobi Summit on ICPD25, youth leaders, activists noted that young thought leaders and entrepreneurs are change agents shaping the sexual and reproductive health rights agenda through inclusive approaches. They're demanding a seat at the table, standing up against discrimination and fighting for vulnerable and marginalized populations who continue to be left behind. The Nairobi Summit on ICPD25 is a three-day event that brought together over 9,000 attendees to discuss and debate topics important to women, girls, families, and societies. All right, we now want to have this conversation here in studio, and joining me, I'll start to my far left, that is Amos Mwale, Executive Director, Center for Reproductive Health and Education, Zambia, and of course, my immediate left, Dr. Moses Muwonge, who is Executive Director, Samasha Medical Foundation in Uganda. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you so much.
All right, so I will start with you, Amos. What agreements and recommendations came out of this conference?
Interesting. First and foremost, each government has agreed that there are a number of harmful traditional practices that we need to eliminate. And to do that, each government which was represented had their own commitments that were made. And one of the themes that was used was to ensure that harmful traditional practices are actually eliminated by 2030.
What traditional practices?
So for instance, people from the Southern Africa, you know that as we don't have FGM, our governments have committed to ensure that child marriage comes to an end by the year 2030. Any harmful traditional practices that hinders women to progress actually comes to an end. In this part of East Africa, I think the president of Kenya highly committed that he needs to end FGM.
Yes.
And that was his key message, that whatever it takes, and his counterparts actually ensured that FGM is the key agenda in the meeting.
All right. Now, on Tuesday, the UN committed to a number of issues, and I won't be able to go through all of them, but there's one that actually caught my attention. That is, intensify system-wide efforts to eliminate all preventable maternal and child mortality, to eradicate gender-based violence against women, girls, and youth, and to eliminate the unmet need for family planning that constrains the rights and well-being of millions of women and young people. Now, this is your sector, both of you. Maybe I'll come to you, Dr. Moses. Let's just go one issue at a time, and I'll start with the most controversial one here, and that is family planning. Family planning is a two-way thing from where I stand, but then our culture and our men sort of don't really take it as a two-way thing and leave it to the woman to deal with contraceptives and family planning. How should we change that going forward as a world?
Well, when you say family planning is controversial, sometimes I find it a bit misleading, because in our culture, from a long time ago, our parents, the grandparents, practiced family planning. And that time they were using the withdrawal method. When they had enough children, they used withdrawal methods. And it was not effective. And as we know, we've discovered, science has shown that the withdrawal method is not effective. And also they used to take some herbs. So family planning started a long time ago because there was a desire to really make sure that they have manageable families. And going forward, we've come now to the modern era where we're using technology to still make sure that if you want to have a child, you have a child. Now, one of the things that people mistaken for family planning, we are not saying that we are limiting the number of children that one should have. We are saying that each couple should have the number of children that they can look after. If you know you can take care of 4 children, then have 4 children. But you should not have 10 children and you can't take care of the 10 children. That's the concept of family planning.
Yeah, just to add on, I think let's begin with the definition.
Yes.
I think the definition is very interesting. When you hear people say family planning, it just simply means you plan your family.
Yeah.
Not necessarily that you are you're restricted to a number of kids you want, but it simply means, here's a woman, for instance, if you actually want to go to school, you can't have 6 children continuously.
Yes.
So it means that for production, for instance, if you are employed here, if you become pregnant the next 6 years, each year, that's the choice you would have taken. But for production purposes and to ensure that your health is well, there is this spacing that you are given that, okay, for Ashley to get 4 children, the ones she has planned, let her space them in the next 4 years. So you can have one now, when you recover, you have another one. But we've seen instances where you have a child this year, you have a child the following year. But what does that do to a woman?
Okay.
Okay, what does that do to the family? You start focusing on your kids when they're under age. One of the things you mentioned also was maternal death.
Yes.
What does that really mean? These are things that we are discussing.
Yeah.
Okay, so going further, I think the definition is very important. So the usage of contraceptives means that the family has discussed it, they have agreed that this is the number of children we're going to have, and when you actually want to have them. That's simply what family planning means.
Right.
It doesn't mean that we are actually stopping people from having children.
And you've mentioned contraceptives, and this
Yes.
is something people now use every day. I think at some point misuse, especially the youth of nowadays, the likes of P2 and the likes of the implanons and all those. Most of these have effects to the woman's body. So then what happens then?
You know, I'm a medical doctor.
Yes.
And I'm telling you, there's no medicine you'll ever take that has no side effects. The issue is to what extent are those side effects affecting you? Some of you who have been having malaria, when you take chloroquine or malaria queen or quinine, you know sometimes you get side effects. But how are those side effects actually affecting a person? So when it comes to contraceptives, there are what we call minor things that you can get out of taking contraceptives. It doesn't mean that they're going to affect your physiology as a person. It's a normal thing, and studies have shown that most of the contraceptives, once you go to healthcare provider, the first thing you need to do is first have comprehensive counseling. You don't just go and pick. You go and you are counseled, you are given proper information, even sometimes you take your blood pressure to make sure that the product that you're going to take is what exactly you need. Now, what we have, some people just wake up and go and say, me, I want this product without even counseling. And that's why in family planning service provision, we emphasize there must be counseling. And once you have a contraceptive method that you've chosen of your choice, then now you can continue replenishing.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's just move on to the next issue, which is eliminating all preventable maternal and child mortality. This is where you are at. You said we need to know the definition. So maybe we can start by that. What is exactly maternal and child mortality?
So when you look at the way our health systems work, so when the UN and the countries, the heads of states, said that they want to eliminate all maternal death, it means that, one, they want to make sure that any woman who is going to deliver should have access to the health facility. Because one of the things that has caused maternal death is late delivery, okay, hemorrhage, not going to the facility. So we've seen that we are losing a lot of women because they're not attending to antenatal. So one of the things that we want to ensure is that every pregnant is valid. I'll give you an example. In our colleagues in Europe, if someone dies from pregnant, it's a case. Why should a woman die from pregnant? Because pregnant is preventable. You can't die from pregnant unless it's really bad. So one of the things that the governments want to do is that no woman should die from pregnancy. Okay. Imagine you dying from a pregnant. Then it scares other people getting pregnant. People start thinking that pregnant is a very bad thing. But to encourage people to see pregnant as a positive thing, that's what they're trying, that they have to ensure that no child you have miscarriage, no child dies from premature. They want to ensure that every pregnancy is actually safeguarded.
And how do we ensure that?
Those are the things now that government have to put in place.
Okay.
One, people have to have access to the nearest facility. Two, the roads have to be done well so that people have access to the facilities. Three, we need to train more service providers so that when you go to the facility, you don't wait in a long line for you to be seen. Because one of the things that discourages women from going to the hospital in the early days of their pregnancy is that, look, I'm okay, I'm fine. but you don't know how you are. We have had cases where a woman has come to say, okay, there's no heartbeat for the child. Why is there no heartbeat? You didn't go for antenatal. You didn't go to check, because if you have regular checkups, you should be able to know that actually the pregnancy is growing very well. So for that to happen, there's need for you to ensure that our MNCH facility is working perfectly well, or close to perfectly well. At least we have service providers, we have all the necessary medicine. You are being monitored, like Moses said, the BP is okay.
Yeah.
You're living a well, ready to be a mother.
Okay.
That way is the only way we're going to eliminate all.
All right, that was a very extensive, and thank you very much for that. Now, to moving to the next issue, which is to eradicate gender-based violence against women. This has been one of the thorns that we are facing in the world. There's the issue of, yes, there's gender-based violence. And it's not only to women, but right now we're talking about women. But there's the issue of, yes, I'm beaten or I'm violated in some way, but I don't report. So how do we eradicate things that we do not know of?
Yeah, I mean, gender-based violence is a big issue. And I want to connect it to really maternal death. Okay. Because the issue of maternal death it's linked to gender-based violence. If you have a young girl who is 9 years, 10 years, 12 years, and she's forced into a sexual relationship or just sex, and she gets pregnant, the likelihood of that young girl, an adolescent, dying during giving birth are high. Right now in Kenya, I think 23% of the girls below the age of 18 are pregnant. 23%. So out of 100 girls you meet on a Kenyan street who are below the age of 18, 23 get pregnant. Now, when you give birth when you're young, the likelihood of survival during childbirth is low. Now, among those who are having pregnancies below the 18, most of them is not consented. So you find that they are mostly forced into sex, or they are violently assaulted and they end up into sex. But also those young people below the age of 18, that's why I have what's called female genital mutilation. These young girls are not given a choice to choose whether to have the female genital mutilation or not. They are held by force and parents just cut their genitals. That's where the gender-based violence comes from. And then you continue into adulthood, and there are many things that happen. What we talk about sexual reproductive health and rights is to make sure that every woman has a right to decide what she wants to do. Maybe Amos can add on that, but I wanted to emphasize that most of the maternal mortality we are having is linked to the gender-based violence. And also most of the newborn and adolescent health deaths we're seeing are somehow related to that same gender-based violence, where there's rape.
Okay.
You find young girls are being raped. They are being forced into marriages. Imagine a 12-year-old girl who are in a conference, and someone from Philippines gave us an example, that there's a young girl who was forced into marriage at the age of 9. So she gave birth at the age of 9, she gave birth at the age of 10, and at the age of 11, she died giving birth. Those are things that we talk about, and you find people saying, this conference is talking about controversial issues. We are talking about real life, real human beings.
Okay, so even as we conclude, how do we make sure no one is left behind?
I mean, that's a good point to actually end the session. One of the things that we need to do is that we need to focus on both men and women. If we have to eliminate gender-based violence, we need to focus on both parties. The GBV involved both people. So if you're going to target one set of individuals, you are not doing anything. So we need to ensure that the programs that are designed are actually addressing men and women. Right now, I think we need to start with the generation that is younger. Okay, the young people are growing now. We need to teach them in school to respect women. We need to teach women to respect men and live as human beings. Okay, we can't go on with a whip to whip people, but we need to let them know that a woman should be valued, a man should be valued. There's an important point you brought out where you're saying if people are not reporting. People have died for not reporting.
Yeah.
In a lot of cases, even empowered women, we've seen empowered women dying because they have not reported.
Yeah.
So we need to instill this sense of responsibility that we even prevent it from happening. If it doesn't happen, then we won't have it.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's the perfect way of ending. Thank you very much, Amos Mwale, Executive Director, Center for Reproductive Health and Education in Zambia, and of course, Dr. Moses Mwonge, Executive Director, Samasha Medical